Hey guys, it's CS Joseph of csjoseph.life. Do another episode for season 19. This is episode 8, How to Cognitively Develop ENTPs. Not really going to be looking at or saying any announcements today. I'm just going to be diving right into the lecture. But as part of this lecture, and this is actually very relevant to our discussion about ENTPs today and my type, we're going to be talking about uh, cleaning up a discrepancy or misconception about the content to season 19. The reason is because I've been having some people talk about what I've been saying regarding enlightenment and the path to enlightenment, as well as cognitive integration, etc. But let's be honest, I think they're misconstruing that because I think it's leading to people potentially developing or at least seeking godhood or a god complex as a result of reaching enlightenment. Now, many people around the world, especially people involved with the New Age movement or potentially the theosophical societies out there, this also includes Masonry, the teachings of Albert Pike, etc., and the occult at large, especially involving the occult as presented by Mark Booth in his book, The Secret History of the World. I vehemently maintain that this idea that enlightenment means, someone obtaining some kind of godhood status is absolutely false and fundamentally false. You have to look at humanity as basically like servants, ultimately servants in whatever capacity. And the reason for that is because that's what we do. We put our faith into things or we desire things, and it's ultimately from like a point of it's all from a point of servitude. And this is why a lot of texts talk about a concept known as idolatry. And idolatry is where someone gives themselves over to an idol, like Halo or Xbox or World of Warcraft, or insert addiction here: alcoholism, drugs, anything that gives you like nymphomania, anything that gives you consistent dopamine release or dopamine addiction. Social media could account. But basically, human beings are servants. And the more enlightened somebody becomes, the more integrated cognitively they become less burdened, which is the true definition of enlightenment, is being enlightened, meaning we have our burden removed off of our shoulders. Instead of becoming enlightened, which the occultists like to say is us seeing the light and the new truth, the new way, the hidden truth, the occult, which means the word hidden basically, which is a very Luciferian approach considering the angel of light. Why is it relevant to the ENTP? Because the ENTP psychological archetype just happens to be, at least in terms according to the lore, the same archetype that Lucifer has as well. And, when it comes to these misconceptions, I just wanted to set it straight. The kind of enlightenment that I am preaching is not someone being able to like turn themselves into a god or obtaining godhood. It's about actually enabling a person to become a better servant, because that's what it all is. And a servant that's not serving that is serving the wrong things, right? This is a servant who is doing the greatest commandment, I guess: love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, as well as love your neighbor as yourself. And as I have told people consistently, and whatever God that is that you serve or not serve, or if you're an atheist, that still counts basically. So I'm not saying, like, I'm not telling you on religion or church or any of that. It would be my preference if all that burned to the ground, but that's a whole other story. But when it comes to love your neighbor as yourself, I think a lot has to be focused there as well, because we as human beings, especially ENTPs, need to learn that you have no business loving somebody else or caring for somebody else unless you care for yourself first. This is why the ENTP, Dr. Robert Glover, wrote the book No More Mr. Nice Guy. And if you're an ENTP and you haven't read that book, what are you doing with your life? Like, seriously, go get audible.com, get No More Mr. Nice Guy by Dr. Robert Glover, and upgrade your life like instantly, and then you won't have that issue. But when it comes to the content of season 19, recognize that enlightenment, all it is achieving a higher self and self-mastery such that You are no longer serving the wrong things, but serving the right things, and the burdens of serving the wrong things are removed from you, right? So you can actually, like, be a better person, a true human being, a human being that has obtained personal responsibility, a human being that's obtained humility and wisdom such that they can achieve the highest level, which is mastery, and mastery of self, right? It's a wonder, like you talk about, biblically speaking, again, from the fruits of the Spirit, the final fruit of the Spirit is self-control. I wonder if that means self-mastery. I think it's like pretty similar to that. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, the point is that our approach here at this point in time, it's really just so, you understand from an enlightenment point of view that that's just, not the case. It's not about becoming a god or obtaining godhood. It's not about like arriving in that regard, because there's no such thing as arriving. There really isn't. What there is kaizen, which means continuous improvement, constant, endless improvement, self-improvement. That is the true gospel of what I am saying. Is constant self-improvement. That is the good news, basically. We need to be focused on constant self-improvement and enlightening ourselves of these worthless burdens that we put on ourselves because we end up serving the wrong things. What we really need to be doing is serving the right things, but we can't do that, like serving our fellow man, for example, and being ideal servants in that regard. But we can't do that if we are saddled up with like material possessions all the time, or if we're saddled up with obligations that we don't even want, or being in relationships with people we shouldn't be in relationships with, or the consequences of our actions being bad health, etc., and whatnot. It's just these consistent, endless burdens over and over that we saddle upon ourselves, and we don't even realize it. And it's especially difficult for ENTPs because ENTPs learn specifically from, trial and error. ENTPs do not learn from other people's mistakes. ENTPs learn from their own mistakes. That's it. So if you assign something new to an ENTP, expect them to completely screw it up. Every possible way that they could screw it up, they will screw it up. So once they have studied every wrong way to do something, they understand every right way to do something. Now, you can kind of show them how to do it right initially to kind of fast track them there if you're an SE user. But if they're having to do it by themselves, well, expect them to learn it the wrong way initially for like the first 1,000 times until they finally get it right. Welcome to ENTPs, doing it the hard way the first time. So just understand like that, that's really necessary. But anyway, let's get a little bit deeper into the lecture while, setting the record straight here for people. What is the purpose of an ENTP? The ENTP is the rogue type. They're very roguish. They're very shadowy. They like to stay hidden, invisible, and always waiting for their opportune moment to strike. That's basically what the rogue is all about. But over time, the rogue can turn into the knight, who's representing a house, a very honorable person, a person who's justice-oriented, meting out justice and fairness upon the rest of humanity. But the ENTP is all about being original and all about being free. Yes, they could be affiliative, they could be that knight, they could be focused on doing the right thing, but not at the expense of their personal freedom. So their purpose is actually to guarantee freedom in the future for themselves and for their fellow man, by making sure that they are guiding the fate of humanity or their community or their family or whoever, guiding the fates of those around them to a better fate. And that's what extrovert intuition here was all about. Extrovert intuition is all about being aware of one's fate. And this is why ENTPs are one of two Pathfinder types, because the Pathfinders, the ENPs, Pathfinders are able to create opportunities on a whim in a situation, not necessarily an experience, but an opportunity. That's what expert intuition is for. It's all about pulling opportunities out of the ether and then over time bringing them into reality within their own past for the ENTP. Or the ENTP can learn the past and then create additional opportunities based on past experience for others, which is also really cool as well. The bottom line is that because they're any hero, ENTPs are just aware of what everyone's future is. They're also aware of what people want. It's a form of prescience. I've talked about prescience before. The best example of prescience, as defined by Frank Herbert and Frank Herbert's Dune, Paul Atreides, aka Muad'Dib, who is an ENTP, gains the sight, also known as prescience, and he uses it to basically create a revolution. Another example of Muad'Dib is Ben Franklin. Ben Franklin's an ENTP, and he saw an opportunity for creating the Revolutionary War, and he became the mastermind, basically, of the Revolutionary War, the American Revolution. He teamed up with Samuel Adams, who ran the Sons of Liberty, which was the armed faction of Benjamin Franklin's group. And his secret political action group. And after the French and Indian War, they got together and they started plotting, and then they ended up creating the Revolutionary War, such that Americans in the United States of America live free to this day. So just understand that ENTPs have that ability and can orchestrate all of those things, but they all do it from original thought. I remember seeing a meme recently. It's a 1984 meme, because in the book 1984 by George Orwell, there is the thought police, which is police and cops that actually read your mind to determine if you are, compliant with thinking standards. If you're thinking like everybody else, or if you're not, because society is controlled right down to a person's thoughts. That would be a nightmare for an ENTP, because an ENTP cannot help but rebel. In the same way, an ESTP cannot help but rebel, and ENTP also cannot help but rebel. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. That's just who they are. ETPs have to rebel, and ENTPs, it's no different. They have to rebel, and having rebellious thoughts by default, because they're rogues. They're the rogue type. What do you expect? And the rogue type exists to make sure that freedom is always coming to humanity later, and as much as the ESTP is guaranteeing that freedom is coming right now. Right, but it's the ENTP's job to keep their watchful eye on the future to make sure that freedom is always in the future of everyone. Because if freedom is not, well, then guess what? The ENTP's demon will come out and burn everything to the ground. Because it's like, well, hey, if you're gonna take me out, then I'm taking out everyone with me. Boom. Right? Kind of like that. I don't know. It just. It's kind of interesting, seeing how, if you're really going to, force me to self-destruct, then I'm taking everyone with me. It's like, because expert intuition tries to intertwine itself with everybody's futures, everyone's fates, to guarantee that the ENTP themselves has a good future, has a good fate. Because by having that intertwining going, the ENTP's like, okay, hey, if we're intertwined now, so if I fail, you fail, but if you fail, I fail, so I'm going to make sure that you're supported so that we don't fail, basically. And this is why you have Solomon in the book of, I believe it's Ecclesiastes or Proverbs, talking about how, when if a person has a friend or a lover or someone close to them that they're dedicated to each other, if one falls, the other can pick them up, right? But then talking about three people getting together, a triple braided cord is not easily broken, right? That kind of point of view is necessary to the extrovert intuition of the ENTP. The extrovert intuition is able to bind other people's fates to the ENTP's own fate. That way, if they get successful, the ENTP themselves are successful. It's like shared success. It's like a shared better future, basically. But if those people fail, then the ENTP goes down with them, and vice versa. So just understand, that's generally how ENTPs work. It's also how ENFPs work. It's literally how any hero works. And you could actually argue this is how NPs work in general. But ultimately, this is any hero. And the purpose of the ENTP is to is to be an agent of chaos, to inject chaos such that there will always be freedom. Because chaos is a ladder, and that ladder can be you can go up that ladder, and it could lead to power. It could lead to ultimately it's for freedom, and justice and fairness, injecting chaos and doing it original. That's why, because originality itself is a form of chaos. You cannot be original without chaotic factors, because chaos is the source of originality, basically. Which means The ENTP, like the ENFP, is a carrier of the yin more so than the yang. They carry yin energy, and they are masters of yin energy more so than yang energy or yang energy, etc. So please be aware of those distinctions as we're talking about metaphysical concepts here for this season 19 episode. So also, the other purpose of the ENTP is, to achieve all of that, but do it from a point of either utilizing sincerity or insincerity. Truth is a weapon, and that icy sword of truth, or the icy daggers, basically, of the ENTP, as they are the rogue, those icy daggers are absolutely necessary for them to achieve their, their goals, which are ultimately, freedom and freedom for not just themselves, but everybody around them, ultimately, collectively. To bring about that freedom, the ends justify the means, right? And sometimes they have to use their virtue to achieve it, and sometimes they have to do their vice to achieve that. Their vice of insincerity means that ENTPs ultimately are the best liars of all the types. I don't know a better liar than myself, except for maybe Alexander Gianturco, also known as the Matani, who is the most famous EVE Online player in history. It was even featured by Forbes magazine and various other places. He's also an ENTP. But the point is, lying is really one of the tools, and as much as telling the brutally honest truth that ENTPs employ to achieve their goals. And the ENTPs lie in two ways. The best lies are the lies that one can make come true, or if you can't do that, then the next kind of lie you do is you mix in truth with your lie to make it truthy, so people can't tell the difference between what's true and what's false, so that the ENTP can achieve their goals. This is why ENTPs are the best of all the types to do spying or any intelligence gathering or operative related or scouting. Any of those types of things, because they are the rogue. They are a rogue, they are a scout, that's what they do. And then eventually, as they been in the field for a long time, they end up running that, and they become a knight and earn their place amongst the king's court, etc. Based on that standpoint, because they're starters. They are starter types. They're informative. They're initiating. Their movement. They're very indirect. Just like Bruce Lee says, be like water. That is the ENTP way, is being like water. And we'll talk about Bruce Lee in a bit here. But understand, like, it's super important to recognize, sincerity, the brutally honest truth, or the insincerity, which is kind of like more of like a water related approach, but more on that later. So just recognize, being that agent of chaos, to bring that originality in order so that everyone could have a free future or a better future. And sometimes, ultimately, the ENTP would end up sacrificing themselves for the sake of reality, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. But their interaction style, aka communication style, is informed, initiating movement. They're very indirect. And then also their temperament, they are an NT, also known as intellectuals. They are pragmatic, abstract, and systematic. And remember, systematic is focused on doing the best things. And we're going to talk about a little bit interest-based, from like the ESFP superego and the additional abilities that ENTPs can gather from that as well. That's where they stand on the type grid. They are the starter intellectual, aka the ENTP, aka the rogue, the originator, the debater, as some people say. That's basically what how they're defined colloquially, etc. But in order to reach, everything that the ENTP needs to get on the path to enlightenment, or get on the path to cognitive integration, well, guess what, folks? It's just like everybody else. But the four sides of the mind of the ENTP, the ego is obviously the ENTP, which is the rogue. The subconscious is the knight, aka ISFJ. The unconscious, or shadow, is known as the ranger. And then the superego is the ESFP dualist. Pretty interesting combination, if I do say so myself. Those people like their bows and arrows, and I like their swords. I mean, it is a combat type, if you know what I'm saying. That's pretty combative, if you know what I'm saying. Like wow. So ENTPs are dope in that regard. I'm pretty happy that I'm an ENTP. I like being an ENTP. It's pretty cool. Not going to lie. We have our moments here and there, but it is what it is. But remember, guys, the path to enlightenment is basically taking the 4 gateways and utilizing the 4 gateways within our souls, within the 4 sides of the mind. Each side of the mind has a gateway, and we utilize those gateways to basically develop ourselves and reach cognitive integration. Because initially, our 4 sides of the mind are not integrated at all. We are actually disintegrated. When we're born, or when we gain consciousness, etc., when we are conscious, when we have our consciousness, we've just started the first gateway, which is the gateway into our ego, and we haven't developed any of the other sides of our mind. Now, obviously, I've talked about how different sides of the mind develop in different environments and places and times and birth orders and all that, but we'll talk about like the basic development that people should ideally go for. It's kind of weird sometimes people develop their shadows before they develop their own egos or their subconscious, which is what happened to me actually. My journey was a little bit different than the typical cookie cutter journey, which the cookie cutter journey is you develop your ego first, then your subconscious, then your shadow or unconscious, and then your superego. Now, why is the mind disintegrated, basically, from the default? The reason why is the existence of the superego. The superego is like this parasite that has attached itself and corrupted itself to the 4 side of our mind, and is trying to switch places with our ego, basically. And it's doing this in a very violent way. The reason why is because it believes it should be the ego. It should not be subject to the rest of the other sides of the mind. And the ego tries to control it when the ego just jumps from the ego right into the superego, bypassing all those gateways. It does it in a very chaotic, forced manner. And then the superego becomes super demonic in response and uses its superpowers, which its energies are even stronger than the ego itself, and it can overpower the ego, which causes, a human being or an ENTP in this particular example to, act out within the human condition, aka sin nature, and commit atrocities, basically, or heinous acts, etc. And this can cause some major issues for any human being in this scenario. Consequently, the unconscious or the subconscious could be utilized to, their gateways could be utilized as back doors to get to the superego instead of the more direct route, which is, directly from ego to superego. And then as a result of going those indirect routes, it doesn't matter. The superego will not be defeated by the weaker subconscious or the weaker unconscious, and the superego just will end up being like, hey, I will have nothing to do with you. Why is that? The disintegration comes from the fact that the superego is like a very old soul. It's an even older soul than our ego or our subconscious or our unconscious. And the superego has no respect for any of the other sides of the mind. It's like, you guys are arrogant, you guys are foolish, you guys are irresponsible. Why do I want to have anything to do with this family, basically, that's, rolling around in an ENTP's head, etc. This ISFJ, the dualist, or the ESFP dualist, or the ENTP rogue, or the INTJ ranger. The dualist is just like, yeah, I'm not interested in hanging out with you guys because you guys are idiots, basically. And the ESFP superego is just like not interested, right? It's just like absolutely not interested. But anyway, for anyone to gain, or for an ENTP to gain enlightenment or cognitive integration, or to cognitively develop themselves and become the best version of themselves, they have to work on integrating their other 4 sides of the mind. And this is what we've been talking about consistently within season 19. But I know that I'm doing a lot of recap here, folks, but sometimes people just want to just watch the specific episode that's relevant to them. So I kind of have to add in a little bit of recap. So, forgive me on that. It just is what it is, and not much I can do about it. So anyway, with that being said, I'm actually going to share the whiteboard that I've made for this. Awesome. So we got our whiteboard here. So the 4 gateways, what are they? The first gateway to get into the ego, to be able to reach a level of maturity or mastery within each of the 4 sides of the mind, so that the superego welcomes being integrated instead of being forced into integrated. Because if it's forced being integrated, it'll just have a very violent response and destroy a person's life, or potentially lead to other people's lives destroyed, essentially. You do this through the 4 gateways. And the four gateways are that of the first function, the ego. The second one is the inferior function. The third one is the nemesis function, aka the villain function. And the fourth and final one is the demon. And now remember, when you're trying to like go into a gateway, you know, you have your cognitive energy, the energy with which your soul is, and the four sides of your mind is like a giant farm, basically. And each of the rows are the cognitive functions, and the water just, you know, fills up all in the ego where all of that water is. But you open up a gate, the water level goes down, and then there's water on the other side, etc. And that's generally how it works. You open all the gates, the water can go into all sides of the minds, or you can just force that water to go through. But it can go in with a lot of pressure or not very much pressure. It can go in chaotically because there might be air that needs to escape. So it's like going glug, 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 glug. Or it's going in nice and fine and very controlled and very orderly. Now remember, there's chaotic cognitive transitions, and there are orderly cognitive transitions. If someone is going into a side of their mind chaotically, well, then that side of mind is going to get a bad result. So, for example, if an ENTP is in their insecurity, they're just too afraid. They get really stuck in fear. They end up getting like a fear, paralyzed by fear, and they don't take any action. And then all of a sudden, they find themselves in a worse situation over time, and they end up doing things last minute, and it's petty and it's terrible, and they end up failing consistently, right? That's not really appropriate, but it happens because they're afraid of the unknown. Fear of the unknown dominates the ENTP inferior function, or that gateway, that cognitive gateway that they need to utilize. And in order to conquer, they have to conquer their fear in order to send their mental energy through that gateway in an orderly fashion, so that their subconscious could actually be mastered, and they could obtain the a higher level of self. And the attributes or the traits or the like these little achievements that they can unlock within each of the four sides of the mind, so that the superego is actually ready and willing to be integrated into the rest of the mind. So it's a problem. But like I said, you know, when you start off with your ego, the hero function is the first gateway. And mastering the hero function is really, really necessary, that gateway, because typically people start off like children. You know, children are very chaotic, right? They're not really orderly like an adult. And because of the chaos from being a child itself, a yin, you know, being very yin-like with a child, the child needs to be disciplined. The child lacks discipline. Spare the rod, spoil the child. So you can consider the hero function is spoiled by default. In fact, all of the four sides of the mind are spoiled by default. And this is a consistent issue. No matter what you do, that spoilage will always be there. So what do you do as a result? Well, it really comes from, you know, maturity. If you while you're being spoiled as a child, you know, within your hero function, you can decide to not be spoiled because of the personal responsibility, you know, that would be, you know, necessary to curb or control the ego finally. But that's the thing, you know, you hear about people talking about cognitive loops, right? And TI parent is a very rough function to master. It was very hard for me to master, actually. I was actually afraid of using it because in my family, as an ENTP, no one wants TI parent because to them, TI parent is too harsh, right? And I live in a family, I have a family of affiliatives. Thank God my wife is pragmatic, so she's cool with it. But like in my affiliative family, oh, you're too harsh, oh, you're a bad person, oh, you're this, or you're that. I wasn't really ever actually allowed to develop my TI parent. And what this caused is that my hero function and my child function had free reign. They're both very optimistic functions, but they were behaving basically childish, you know, and the hero's like, ooh, I'm flying around saving the world, causing a lot of collateral damage to other people. That's great. I'm irresponsible. And the child is naturally irresponsible as well, and then keeps getting the hero into trouble, right? But you need the responsible parent, you know, basically mediating between the two of them. This is why when a person, you know, is born, their cognitive stack is basically they develop their hero function first, then their child function, then their inferior function, and then the last one to develop is actually their parent function, because the parent function is actually the hardest to develop. And developing the parent function is where someone gets their sense of personal responsibility. And this is where the virtue and vice of the ENTP comes in. We talk about sincerity or we talk about insincerity. Insincerity is like when an ENTP lies for the sake of telling the truth, basically. But the TI parent of the ENTP, with it having absolute sincerity, it's where the ENTP finally accepts where, hey, I'm a very alienating person because I'm just going to tell the truth regardless of the consequences. That's a serious thing. That's a serious issue, right? Telling the truth regardless of the consequences. And it happens, mastering this gateway literally happens when an ENTP decides to start living a no bullshit life. That's literally it, a no bullshit life, where they'll bullshit people to survive as they need it, using their insincerity vice for like self-protection. But at the end of the day, the people they really care about, the people they really respect, the people they love, the people that they want, that they're loyal to, they're just going to be brutally honest with people, no matter what the consequences are. The reason why this usually doesn't happen, the reason why people chaotically use their ego and such that the hero and the child function are on an endless cognitive loop with each other, is because the ENTP is like, oh, well, I want to be wanted and I want people to value me. So then the ENTP ends up serving those idols of those people that are like, hey, I'll do this for you if it makes me wanted, right? I'll be loyal to you, right? If you're going to want me, right? Or I'm going to be loyal to you if you're going to feel good about me. I'm going to do all these things. And then the ENTP ends up giving and giving and giving and giving, and they never get anything back. They truly want someone to respect them. They truly want someone to want them. They truly want someone to feel good about them, but it never happens because no one respects the ENTP. Because the ENTP is willing to lie, more so, because they're wearing that mask and they're not willing to be real with people. The mask can work for a while, but eventually the mask is going to mean nothing, because when it comes, the mask may get them in the door, but when it comes to actually finishing or solving the problem or actually rising to the occasion in that particular situation, where's the parent function? The TI parent has such precision of logic and truth that when it's brutally honest, people will listen. It will burn them, or at least freeze them in place, because it's more of an icy sword, not a fiery sword of truth. But using that sword of truth will cut people down. They'll be alienated and they'll hate the ENTP. But without that TI parent there, which could potentially actually solve their problems if they just take the time to listen, but then they just fall away and they're so alienated by the TI parent, well, those people, they run off. This is why with my YouTube channel, it's like, hey, I tell people, hey, he who has an ear, let him hear, right? I'm not here to comfort you guys into wisdom. I'm here to tell you the brutal, honest truth. I ain't going to sugarcoat anything. It's funny, my mom told my wife recently about how, Chase, he doesn't dress things well. He just says it, he's real cutthroat with what he says. I'm like, yeah, because I'm not affiliative. I'm pragmatic. I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. I'm going to tell you the truth because you should be able to stand up to the truth. You shouldn't be weak. You need to stand up to the truth and live your life by the truth. Because here's the thing. If an ENTP does not doing that, they're hypocrites. They're absolute hypocrites. Because remember, the icy sword of truth, as a crusader type, is supposed to be cutting down the opponent, whoever they're criticizing, and cutting themselves at the same time. The ENTP has to be able to take the hits. But if they're not living in truth, they're living a lie. And if they're living a lie, they're being irresponsible. A responsible ENTP, an ENTP is responsible. You know that their ego is their ego gateway is on towards the path of enlightenment and integrated well if they're not living a lie. Because they're living the truth, no matter what, even regardless of the consequences, and just telling people the straight up truth, almost Bill Burr style. Not caring about whether or not those people find them unwanted or undesirable, or those people find them unvalued, right, or undervalued. Because to the ENTP, the truth is what they should be serving, not the whims of other people or the value systems of other people, which are just subjective to begin with. Truth is what sets an ENTP apart. And gaining that personal responsibility, if they're living in truth and holding themselves to the truth themselves as they discover the truth, as they seek the truth, then they realize, oh, I need to be living my life differently. And over time, people will listen to what they're saying and start to follow them over time. Those are the people who are the real people. Because the people that are alienated by the ENTP, They're either not ready to hear the ENTP's message, or they're too scared, or they're corrupt, or they're not willing to be exposed or shamed for who they are, what they are, and they are aware of that risk. And that's a problem. It can lead to ignorance, and that's another issue. Like an underdeveloped TI function, an underdeveloped TI parent, which means the gateway, the gateway of the hero isn't working properly, because chaotically, if you go through the hero gateway chaotically, you're going to have a cognitive loop. But if you do it orderly, you will have a TI parent in between the hero and the child, basically being that mediator, making sure that the child is behaving truthfully and the hero is not harming people. Because the hero can harm people. The hero can send people down the wrong path, the wrong fate that can lead to their ultimate destruction, or can cause other people to fail. The parent is there to make sure that the ENTP is not being a hypocrite. Here's another example of it. The ignorance of TI can happen. This happens when it's going through a chaotic transition directly into the ego. Because TI, if it's relying on preferred input, that TI parent is literally a walking echo chamber. Wow, that's worthless. Or if it's relying upon last known input, then it's like, okay, why are you being closed-minded and not listening to other people's input and other people's opinions, other people's research, other people's statistics? Why are you not at least taking the time and using critical thinking? Because of those weaknesses, that TI can become, it is ignorant, right? Only when the ENTP is willing to consider other people's opinions and verify all of their opinions using logic. The ignorance of TI is a problem in a chaotic transition. But when the ENTP starts to set their life in order, because remember, order determines outcome, they are living by the truth. And living by the truth gives the ENTP an opportunity, a huge opportunity. Because then they're no longer having an echo chamber, and they're verifying all this new information from other people, and they're not relying on last known input and thus cannibalizing their thinking and causing them to take stupid actions either. They have obtained personal responsibility because the ENTP starts realizing truths. I need to be a better person. I need to be in a state of Kaizen. I need to be on the path to continuous improvement. Continuous improvement is the truth. There is no such thing as perfection. There is only a such thing as becoming better than I was yesterday. And that is a constant, that needs to be constant in every human being. The ENTP understands this. And in order to obtain freedom, one has to be personally responsible, right? Well, they don't do that until they start living in truth. And then as a result, the order is set for the ego, and then it becomes an orderly cognitive transition where the TI parent is being utilized properly. And as a result, on the path, the ENTP on the path to integration learns personal responsibility. Because before then, the ENTP, the ignorant ENTP, would realize that, hey, I'm just going to take the quick route. I'm just going to, and the quick route seems to me, surrendering myself to the whims of other people, being loyal to the wrong people. Yeah, the quick route. LOL. That's appropriate, right? What a waste of time, ENTPs. What are you doing, being loyal to the wrong people? Well, another reason for that is the second gateway. In its chaotic form, it's very afraid, because that's where a person's fear is the fourth function. It is also the second gateway. And when ENTPs are put into their subconscious, they are afraid of the unknown. They have this huge fear of the unknown. They have this fear of failure. Let me tell you something, ENTPs. You want to have success? Here's a practical tip to getting and developing your inferior function. Here it is. This is like the number one best piece of advice I could ever give an ENTP. And here it is right here at 40 and a half minutes in. And I quote, "If you are afraid of something, it is your duty to do it." If you are afraid of something, it is your duty to do it. If you live your life by that truth, you will be the most successful ENTP that walks the earth. Because I don't see very many ENTPs being willing to do that. Look at Socrates. He's an ENTP. He wasn't even afraid of death. Think about that. That's the true power of the ISFJ subconscious, actually, is that there's no such thing as fear. It's absolute fearlessness. Right? Because there is no fear of death. Because fear of death in of its own right is actually arrogant if you think about it. because one is thinking themselves even more important than death itself, that it is arrogant to believe that death cannot claim a man. Don't forget, even Jesus Christ died. What business do you think that you're not going to, or anyone for that matter? ENTPs need to basically make their peace with God and realize that there's nothing to be afraid of except fear itself. Les Brown says that fear is false evidence appearing real. It's not actually real. And it's hard for ENTPs to understand what real is because SE demon inhibits their ability to see the reality of situations, only the what ifs and the endless what ifs. But if you have a bad experience yourself because you failed, because you weren't afraid of something, good! Because then you're gaining, wisdom, maturity, life experience that you need. Because remember, ENTPs only learn through trial and error. If you're constantly afraid of error, you're not going to trial, which means you're not going to learn anything, which means you're basically going to be a baby for the rest of your life. You're not going to be effective. You're going to be worthless. You're going to become dishonorable. No one's going to want you. No one's going to value you. SI and Fury, when it becomes aspirational, when it has that orderly transition, it realizes that it can outlast anything. It can endure any hardship. It can endure any trial. I had a trial last night. I was at Buffalo Wild Wings with my wife, and we got the hottest of the hottest of the hottest chicken wings, the boneless wings. It was extremely hot. And it burned my tonsils. It was so hot. But they were so good. And I realized that I liked them. And I had more than my wife did. My ESTP wife didn't have as many wings as I did. An interesting accomplishment. But that's just, my SI function, like realizing, hey, better to not have fear in that regard. Don't be afraid of the unknown. And I just jumped in head first. Every time, I even learned rowing this year with my wife. We went and learned sculling. I didn't know anything about it. I was scared, but then I just jumped in. I jumped in feet first, got in, handled, and I started to learn and was able to engage my self-discipline because I wasn't afraid of the unknown, right? Guys, it's not about fear of failure. You will be afraid. You will fail, but failure is everything an ENTP needs to become successful. Guys, if you are afraid of doing something, it's your duty to do it. I guarantee you'll figure it out, So remember you have to be fearless. ENTPs, if you haven't read the book, The 50th Law by Robert Greene, the 50th Law of Power, because he did the 48 Laws of Power, but the 50th Law of Power is the Law of Fearlessness. You have to exercise the Law of Fearlessness in your life so that you can be the best you. So you can be the most effective you. So you can be the most successful you. So you can become the ISFJ Knight and mete out justice and be there for other people and support them and help them, such that your FE child becomes a responsible FE parent, such that you don't find yourself loyal to the wrong people, such that you are caring for people and meting out justice and defending people for people who deserve it and not people who don't deserve it. Why is it every time I coach ENTPs, they're in relationships with people that don't deserve them? It's because the FI trickster doesn't know how to value themselves, and for over time they're like, I haven't developed my TI parent yet, and I wanted to be wanted, and I wanted to be valued, so I decided to be in a relationship with somebody. Wow, this was me with my ENFJ relationship that I had years back, and dealing with that. That's literally who I was. But it wasn't until TI parent kicked in and realized I need to be living in truth instead of being like this, non-true fake version of myself, and literally be truly who I am and live in truth, right, within my ego. But then also, I need to not be afraid of failure and understand that it's my responsibility to handle this appropriately. Why is it ENTPs struggle with breakups? I don't have that problem anymore because I learned self-respect. An ENTP can't learn self-respect unless they get over their fear of the unknown. You just have to realize, ENTPs, that you can endure anything. This is why the book of James, the brother of Jesus, James, who is an ESTP, says, quote, "My brothers," this is James chapter 1, verse 1, and I quote, "My brothers, if you consider it all joy. Be happy when you encounter various trials and tribulations in your lives." That way you develop steadfastness and perseverance, right? Perseverance is the secret of introverted sensing inferior. If you're afraid of something, do it because you know you can endure anything, including the consequences of the failure itself, such that you can move on, such that you will be okay. You just have to have faith, and faith in yourself. If you have faith, you can live fearlessness, because the opposite of faith is fear. The opposite of fear is faith. So by having faith, you can enter in the orderly transition and become the ISFJ Knight, who is a guardian of the future. Somebody who guarantees and will protect the freedom of our race, of our nations, of our people, of our families, of our communities. This is the true path of the ENTP reaching enlightenment, and such that they gain humility, because the ENTP finally recognizes that, you know what, I'm a little bitch. I should probably, not be so. They're finally able to admit that they're weak, but they realize why they're weak. They're weak because they are afraid. They're weak because they lack faith. Darth Vader said, and I quote, "I find your lack of faith disturbing." Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope. There's a reason for that. The ENTP recognizes and admits to themselves that I am weak. And as soon as they admit to themselves that they are weak, they seek to become strong. It is their duty to become strong. They become the ISFJ Knight. This is exactly what happened to the great ENTP Bruce Lee himself. He talks about be like water, which is extrovert intuition hero. He talks about honor and duty, which is his ISFJ subconscious. He researched all different forms of martial arts and created a master martial art known as Jeet Kune Do, the ultimate form of Kung Fu. In the same way that I researched psychology and created a master psychology system, and I'm teaching it to you now. It's the same approach, because I am trying to defend the future of our race and make sure that our race has a better future by providing these original innovations, by creating chaos in the psychological community to bring you folks enlightenment so that the burdens of your lives are taken away, as is my duty. And I'm not going to be afraid about whether or not people reject me. I'm not going to be afraid about if I'm unwanted or people don't value what I have to say, because my TI parent is aware that what I'm saying is the truth. Inasmuch as my SI inferior is aware that I have faith that at one point in time people will end up listening to me. And I have concrete proof of it now. Think about it. Season 3, Episode 16, who are the INFPs? Think of all those INFP people who are so butthurt over everything that I told them, and then they run away from my YouTube channel complaining about how, oh, C.S. Joseph, that guy, he's a total dick, he's a total ass, he doesn't know what he's talking about, oh, he hurt my feelings, whatever, and they run away for 6 months. Only to come back and say, oh, yeah, you were right. You see what I'm saying? The truth stands on its own. People will always come back to the truth because it's the only thing that's actually real. That's the only thing that doesn't change, is the truth. Once you have it, it doesn't change. So because of that, it's a foundation that they can stand upon, and they're swimming out there in the chaotic land. They see that nice little platform, that dock, the dock of truth, and they set their little pinky finger on it, and they're like, safety. Yeah, truth, right? So I'm not afraid to be brutally honest with you people, because I know I'm telling the truth. So it doesn't matter what you people think. It doesn't matter how you feel about me. It doesn't matter if you don't want me, because you're still going to come back to me in the end. This is why ENTP's seductive style is coquetry. I'm literally coquetting my audience because I'm telling them the truth, but they fall away because they're so alienated by me telling the truth, only for them to realize later that I was absolutely right, and then they come back to me later. It's inevitable, and I recognize by any hero this is inevitable. Therefore, what business do I have being afraid? None. So instead, I have faith. And I have faith that eventually this entire world will adopt these truths, such that one day everyone will have a better future because they will be able to understand themselves. They will be able to understand each other. They will be able to love their neighbor as themselves. They'll be able to have self-respect and self-love and be able to love and respect each other and have such great, amazing relationships so that fatherlessness will no longer exist in this world. This is absolutely critical. And I understand this. And it's my duty through my ISFJ subconscious to make this happen. Another way to make your orderly SI orderly and not be afraid is have self-discipline. Develop self-discipline by being willing to take the hits and endure. Go learn a martial art and take the hits, ENTPs. That's something I need to do. I'm still working on developing my subconscious. But either way, you have to have the best way to get over your fear and to start having faith, the faith that you need to develop an orderly cognitive transition and use it consistently so that you can develop your subconscious and grow in your subconscious so that you can have faith to do that. You just have to realize one fact. You have to accept the truth that you are weak. And it is only realizing and accepting your weakness that you can become strong. So that you can have faith in yourself at last. So that you can become the strongest of all of the types, the ISFJ subconscious, aspirational form. It's dope. Now the third gateway within the unconscious, the INTJ Ranger unconscious. The ENTP constantly worries about their own future. That's why if they get sick and they've never experienced it before, they're freaking out and they have this like hypochondria reaction to it and they freak out, kind of like Howard Hughes freaking out about germs and whatnot, according to the movie The Aviator, but with Leonardo DiCaprio, etc. It's that whole same setup. But they're worried about their future. They're so worried about their fate. That's why they use their anti-hero through cognitive orbit to wrap other people's fates around their fate so that if those people fail, the ENTP fails. But if those people succeed, the ENTP succeeds as well because they are worried about their own future. But let me tell you something. NI Nemesis, NI Villain can be solved by taking additional action. In the same way that the ego gateway is mastered by always living in truth regardless of consequences, in the same way that the second gateway can be mastered by realizing one is weak and then seeking to become strong as a result of abandoning fear in favor of faith, so also the NI Nemesis gateway can be mastered with its orderly transition by recognizing that it should never give up. You are going to fail, ENTPs. You need to have a great relationship with failure. Failure, recognize, is more important. It is more important than success. Because in success, you don't learn anything. How can you learn wisdom if you're getting success and success and success? Don't you guys remember the Outer Limits episode, or maybe it was the Twilight Zone, where this man dies and he goes to heaven. And it's great. He gets all the girls. He goes to casinos. He's winning all the time. He wins the lottery multiple times. He has all the nice cars. He has everything, and it's amazing. But then after a while, he gets bored because it's like there's no challenge. There's absolutely no challenge. And he's just trying to figure out, like, what the hell is going on? So he goes over to the angel, and he's like, Mr. Angel, like, I'm bored. There's nothing, like, I always win. This is lame. Like, what do I do? Like, is it, like, I had no idea heaven was going to be like this. And then the angel looks at him, turns into a demon, and says, who said this was heaven? ENTPs, you need to be used to failure. Failure is everything. Be okay with failure. In fact, seek failure. You have to seek failure, and you have to never give up. I use this analogy so many times. I've been left for dead in the cold, in the rain, metaphysically speaking, in a ditch. Cars are driving by, and you just have to realize, ENTPs, no one cares at all. No one gives a shit. No one gives a shit about you. No one does. Stop trying to pander to people, imagining that they actually do when they actually don't. What's in it for them to give a shit about you anyway? Nothing. You have to realize this. So only, like, when you finally actually meet your true lover, okay, yeah, great. But until then, do they really give a shit about you? No. No, they don't. Your children are not even obligated to give a shit about you. No one is. You have to recognize that. You're in the ditch. You need to get out of the ditch. Here's the thing. If I'm in the ditch, and I've been in the ditch so many times, I've dealt with homelessness. I've dealt with having everything I own taken away from me multiple times. I've had homelessness multiple times. I've had failed businesses multiple times. I've been an absolute wreck, an absolute mess. I've let down my family so many times, investors, all of that. It's been horrible for me. I have an entire past of failure in my life, over and over and over again. And my anti-villain, my anti-nemesis is so afraid of failing again. It is so worried about me making the wrong choice. Well, guess what, folks? I learned that I need to seek failure in order to develop the third gateway. Actually, actively seek to fail. Because if I try everything and I fail, the endurance of my SI aspirational will take the hits and I'll still be okay and move forward. Why? Because when you're left for dead in the ditch and there are people walking by and they're driving by and it's cold and it's wet and rainy, you're covered in mud and you're naked and you have absolutely nothing and no one cares. At least, you still have the ability to stand up in the ditch and flip the bird to the universe itself and just in sheer defiance tell it, you know what, I'm never going to give up anyway. You keep trying to put me in this ditch, you keep trying to defeat me, but nope, I'm going to stand up and keep moving forward one step at a time. You can't stop me. And just out of sheer defiance, the defiance that gives the ENTP the ability to never give up is the power of INTJ shadow. Knowing that my path, my fate will be okay as long as I never, ever give up. This was a lesson that the ENTP known as Nagato, or pain, in Naruto had to learn. He was he had the Rinnegan, the ocular prowess that gave him the ability to control the sage of the six paths, or at least the six paths of the sage. And people don't really know what this anime is, but he was an ENTP. And he had to learn failure. He had to learn the power to never give up. And he learned it from this INFJ, Naruto, who has NI Hero. And he learned through his pedagogue, Naruto, and as much as Naruto learned from Nagato, pain, the lessons of failure, right? Whereas, the lesson of hope was given to Nagato. That's the point, folks. You conquer the third gateway and get it from chaotic transition, with being all worried about, oh, what if I make the wrong decision? Okay, well, then I'm not going to make a decision at all, so I'm worried. So then I could become stagnant, right? And then I become lazy and stuck in my SI comfort zone. When the reality of the situation is, the ENTP needs to realize it's their responsibility and their duty to never give up. Because by never giving up and seeking failure as a result of never giving up, they will have, guess what? Unlimited wisdom, which is the lesson of extroverted thinking critic. An extroverted thinking critic becomes developed such that it is aware and it obtains wisdom, wisely measuring other people's ideas and opinions and statistics, so that it can actually, through cognitive orbit, support TI parent, so the TI parent is aware even more of truth and truth as we know it. This is the power of NI villain, NI nemesis in its ally form, where it becomes the ally, where the failure becomes an ally, because the failure gives the ultimate resource to the ENTP known as wisdom. ENTPs never giving up and having endless hope is the power of NI ally. NI nemesis is all about worry. But if you never give up and if you have faith, then the faith of your SI inferior becomes SI aspirational. If you have faith, you could say to the mountain, be thou removed. You could say to the mulberry tree, be thou removed. As it says in the book of Luke. That's what Jesus said, right? So recognize those worries. Recognize those problems. Recognize those issues. You can't get there without it. Never, ever give up. If you give up on yourself, Even though you're trying all these things and you keep failing, never give up. You have to live life through trial and error. You have to make every mistake in the book. If you give up, you're not going to learn anything. But if you keep at it, you will learn and you will succeed. I promise. Never give up. Always be hopeful. So, remember, first gateway, live in truth. Second gateway, live fearless. Live in faith. And third gateway, live in hope. Never give up. Ever. Seek failure. Make failure your ally, because from failure gives the greatest substance in the cosmos, and that is wisdom. You cannot wield wisdom properly without humility. Recognize that you're weak so that you can become strong. So that you can be a master of truth. So that you can stand up to the power of the icy sword of truth as you cut yourself at the same time that you're cutting your enemies, because you cannot be a hypocrite. As a result, your unconscious will give you the third gateway mastery, and you gain the third gateway has been mastered at that point, and you gain wisdom, personal wisdom. The ego brings you personal responsibility. The subconscious brings you humility, and then finally, the unconscious gives you wisdom. And once you have these three things, the superego begins to unlock and realize that it wants to at last be a part and is willing to be integrated into the mind, so it is no longer a demon that seeks to destroy reality itself, but it becomes an angel bent on saving reality. Where it becomes an angel that wields the power of TI trickster, or FI trickster, where the ENTP is unaware of what good is. Good is subjective, but then the ENTP finds itself the avatar and the master of good, such that it reaches full understanding from absolute truth to the absolute good, and is able to wield it. This is what Tony Stark did in Avengers Endgame, where he snapped his fingers and gave up his life for all of reality, when he sacrificed himself by using the Infinity Stones for everybody else. And he did it because he let go of his depravity. He let go of his fear. He let go of his worry. He was personally responsible for everyone around him, and he took action. Cost him his life, but it saved reality. Otherwise, ESFP superego just wants to burn everything to the ground. But after the ENTP understands their duty, after the INTJ understands the ultimate hope, after the ego understands its responsibility and its responsibility to live true and live in truth, at that point, the ESFP superego will allow an orderly transition through extroverted sensing demon, where the extroverted sensing demon becomes the extroverted sensing angel, and it becomes angelic, such that the absolute good is once and finally obtained by the ENTP for the sake of everybody else. You can kind of see like how ENTPs have left their mark on the world who have done the absolute good. The Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, the brainchild of Benjamin Franklin, right? Or the iPhone by Steve Jobs, or Jeet Kune Do by Bruce Lee, right? The Four Sides of the Mind by C.S. Joseph, okay? You see all these things, folks? This is what ENTPs are for. This is what ENTPs do, okay? Because I'm here to change reality for the better. Because I am here trying to show people that there is a better way. There is a better future. There is absolute good out there. Even though I emphasize absolute truth, I am seeking the absolute good as a result of being a master of truth. It's absolutely required. Just realized I had some notes that were not exactly relevant to this lecture, so I'm actually going to erase them here. Mastery of the good. So the trickster function, when it becomes developed, it's no longer the ENTP being unaware of what is good. It's where they are absolutely aware of what is good, of the good. Because it's their self-mastery. They finally achieve self-mastery. It is the master function. The trickster function becomes the master. The complete unaware, the complete buffoon, the complete fool, at that point, literally becomes the master of everything good. Just as Tony Stark sacrificed his life for the sake of everybody else, well, saved reality. He obtained and became the avatar of the absolute good with his angelic form of superego instead of the demonic one that destroyed all of reality. The demonic one that was within Thanos, who often people argue is an NT like Tony Stark. The angelic side, turning your superego from a demon to an angelic force, is all about being a servant. It's not about becoming or obtaining godhood or becoming a god. It's not about that. It's about becoming a servant. How many people did Tony Stark as an ENTP serve when he snapped his fingers? How many people has Bruce Lee served by teaching them the ability to defend themselves on the street? How many people has Benjamin Franklin served by authoring the Declaration of Independence with his team and his group and his people, his junto and the Sons of Liberty? How many people have benefited from the iPhone and these technologies? How many people? Everybody. That's the point. Any hero reaches everybody. SE Angelic reaches everybody. This is the point. This is how the ENTP becomes enlightened with the burdens of the idols that the ENTP serves in its depravity as a result of fear and irresponsibility and foolishness and arrogance comes through the ENTP. But once the ENTP has achieved the opposite, living in truth to gain personal responsibility, living in faith to gain humility, to get over their weakness, their personal weakness, living in hope so that they never give up, to develop their unconscious and find the ultimate pathway forward, and then such that they can live in mastery and become a master of the absolute good for the sake of everybody and this reality as we know it. Such is the way of an enlightened and integrated ENTP. If you found this lecture useful, helpful, educational, and enlightening, hopefully you found this lecture useful, guys. ENTP lectures is a little hard for me sometimes because I'm like talking about myself, but you know, as I have grown over the years, it's nice to be able to grow with you and this audience to be able to provide this content and have these conversations on a regular basis. But yeah, guys, be like water, as Bruce Lee said. Read The Warrior Within by John Little. It's Bruce Lee's philosophy. It's my philosophy. Read Altered Carbon to get the philosophy of Kelchrist Falconer, also an ENTP. And then obviously the teachings of Jesus Christ. Those three things make up my personal belief system. So Taoism, Kelism, and the teachings of Jesus Christ into one belief system. That's my belief system. That's where my faith lies. That's where my hope lies. Not saying that that's what you have to do. If you're an atheist, go for it. Have fun. Be an atheist. I'm totally cool with that. I'm not really a church person, let's be honest. I actually would rather see my SC demon burn down all the churches, let's be straight, because I think it's pathetic that 9% of all the money that goes into churches makes it back to the community. But hey, I was raised as a pastor's kid, sue me. This is just how I roll, you know what I'm saying? But the bottom line is, guys, live in truth. You have to do step one, live in truth. Gain the hope necessary for step 3. Gain the faith necessary for step 2, so that you can have personal responsibility, so that you can have humility, so that you can have wisdom, so that you can gain mastery from getting that angelic superego. That is the point, guys. This is who the ENTP is supposed to be. The rogue becoming the avatar, the person who ends up saving everyone and everything by giving everyone a better future, a free future, a guaranteed free future. Such is the way of an ENTP. Such is the way of the rogue who masters the knight and the ranger and ultimately the duelist who can fight for the sake of our race and for reality itself. So anyway, folks, have a good night, and I'll see you guys next month. Later.